Well, downsizing is a word you often hear in the real estate world, but another word that's becoming more frequent is resizing. As millions of baby boomers get ready to enjoy their golden years, home swapping will also be on the rise, but selling one home for another can be a complicated project, both financially and emotionally. Real estate consultant Paul Purcell is here to tell us the best way to trade in one home for another. Paul's a partner at Braddock and Purcell and a real expert in the field of real estate. Paul, good to see you again.
Thanks, Ali. It's good to be here.
This is an interesting concept because in a lot of places we think of it as downsizing because in many cases you've got these baby boomers, the kids are out of the house,
right.
or leaving the house, and they want something different. But in many cases it's not downsizing because they're getting into a more luxurious place or a place where they can go live, and there are services offered, these communities that they can live in. The bottom line is, if you were thinking of doing this, if this has been something you've been thinking about for a few years and you're still thinking about it, with the market where it is today, it sounds like a good idea. You can lock in any of these gains that you've got on your property.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Interest rates have been driving our market for a number of years, but also, as you just pointed out, this baby boomer population, people born in the late 40s into the early 1960s, represent a tremendously huge portion of our marketplace, and they're actually part of what's been driving the market as well. Second homes, downsizing, resizing, as you say. So.
Well, if you're deciding to make that move because you're going to take advantage of the gains that you might have in your home, which could be quite substantial depending on where you live, chances are you're buying into somebody else's gain too, right? I mean, is it ever a good time? Do you ever...
Well, there's no such thing as sell high and buy low.
Right, because if you're selling high and you're buying in the same year, you're...
But you're doing it for a different reason.
Right.
This is something that you have to decide. What is it you want to do? In fact, that's a very good question. So what is my objective? And it's totally your objective now, and that's sort of why it's not downsizing necessarily. You can resize, you can purchase something bigger.
There's the old thought of downsizing where you go from a big house maybe to a condo or an apartment, but there's also, I mean, what are the things people doing?
It's not my parents' generation any longer. It's people like me who are in their 50s and who are doing something completely different. They're looking for something that's just about them. And they really want to enjoy life now. They have more money than ever, living longer, working a bit longer as well. So it's a combination of things. Why not have what we'd like?
And a lot of these housing companies, we follow these housing stocks, these new home builders. They are, in many cases, they have communities that have assisted living or golf courses on them or adult living, things like that.
That's part of the where do you want to go. You know, do you want sunshine? Do you want cold weather sports? Do you want to be near an airport? Do you want to be near a university, cultural centers? It's whatever you want. Do you want swimming, golf, tennis, whatever? And actually, when you talked about, you know, selling high, buying low, for instance, there are so many opportunities and choices that aren't ridiculously expensive throughout the United States. Places down in South Carolina, Florida, where your dollar really goes a long way.
If you don't need to be close to work.
No.
I'm going to be out of this apartment that I've got in New York the minute I don't have to work in this.
And make a killing. The world's sort of your oyster, in other words.
Now, this is always tricky because you do want to, in many cases, the property that you own, before you go make this choice, you're going to want to do the best thing to get the best out of that.
Absolutely.
What do you do? What's the thought process? Somebody comes to you and says, Paul, and maybe you don't deal with people who do this because I know you consult to real estate companies, but when somebody goes in and says, this is what I want to do, Paul, I'm done with things in New York, I want to retire somewhere else, I want to have a golf course. What's the process?
Well, it's actually very, very specific to the individual. So it's what are the goals, what do you want to achieve, and where do you want to live? And it's not a very easy process because, as I said, the world's your oyster, so you really have to spend a lot of time drilling down. There's some books and resources. There's not actually very many transition experts, if you will. This is what this new field is being called.
Sure. It's not just a buying and selling.
No, and so it's sort of an arduous process. We recommend people rent in places. We recommend people, of course, use the website to do a lot of research, travel, talk to people, and really drill down in terms of what their goals are.
What do you do first? You figure out where you're going first, or do you sell your property
I think you have to decide what you want to do and where you want to go, and then you make it your own timetable for selling your property. This is nobody else's, you know, you're not being rushed, so you can selling smart is also one of the most important things as well.
When you say sell smart, that means you smell smart too, I suppose. That means don't get into a situation where now you've done the wrong thing, you're on a timeline that doesn't make sense.
This is typically the single largest asset we have. People have made tremendous amounts of money. Protect it. Be very, very educated about it. And it is your timetable. There's no rush.
What is the what is the way you go about assembling the right team? Who are the right people? What kind of experts exist in this world of making a transition?
Well, clearly there are real estate consultants such as Braddock and Purcell who could help you with the sale of your home and maximizing that asset. And we also help people in terms of where they would like to live. There's some experts such as Adrian Berg, who has a wonderful, wonderful book. It's called How Not to Go Broke at 102.
Yes, we've talked to her, actually.
Many sections in this just about this very topic, because it does represent such a huge part of the population. A guy named Lee Rosenberg. He has a great website for identifying various communities around the United States.
Well, that's kind of the challenge, right? I mean, there's so many options.
Yeah.
Once you've decided that you're not bound to where you live because of work,
right,
or because of kids, or because of school for the kids, all of a sudden the world's your oyster. And one thing we've seen in the last few years is the remarkable difference between communities. I mean, there are some places you can go to. We constantly talk about this on our shows, where you can just get a remarkable deal because you don't need to be close to anything, but you can be close to nature, or you want something else.
And a lot of people don't want to be close to their kids. They want to be as far away as possible at this point in their lives. A major thing, though, is health care. People are very concerned about that. And you'll find a lot of people do stay locally. That's why we're finding, you mentioned assisted living, or Marriott, for instance, is building a lot of projects that have independent living that can move into assisted living. But they tend to be in Long Island, for instance. They're building one on the North Shore. And that's for someone who doesn't want to leave their medical professionals, does want to stay close to their children and family.
All right, Paul, you're going to be back later on in the show. We're going to extend this conversation and open the phone lines up to our viewers, and they can share their views about what you're saying or ask questions. Now, if you decide to do one of these things, you decide to resize, we've got some other things that you might want to think about, because you might think that those Halloween pumpkins and ghosts look great on the front yard, but if you go into one of these communities where they have rules, your neighbor might not agree, and we'll tell you how a neighbor's complaint can end up costing you money if you live in some sort of community. Later, your calls and emails about all things real estate with Paul Purcell. He's a partner at Braddock & Purcell. 1-800-304-3638. Email address is yourmoney@cnn.com.